The world was never the same after his death. In just 13 years of conquest, Alexander the Great built an empire that stretched from Greece to the edges of India, a vast realm that would alter the course of history forever. Yet, for all his power, brilliance, and ambition, Alexander's life ended not in a victory, but in mystery. At just 32 years old, the conqueror who never knew defeat fell to a sudden, unexplained illness, leaving behind a shattered empire, a series of unanswered questions, and a legacy that has fascinated the world for over 2 millennia. Was he a god, destined to rule the world? Or was he a man driven to madness by ambition and power? In this story, we journey through the meteoric rise and tragic fall of one of history's most enigmatic figures. What made Alexander the Great the legend he became? And what caused his untimely death, leaving his empire in ruins? Stay with us as we unravel the truth behind the greatest conqueror the world has ever known. The year is 356 BC. The ancient world stands at the crossroads of fate, and a child is born in the kingdom of Macedon. His name, Alexander. His father, King Philip II, had just completed the unification of the Greek city-states, turning his kingdom into a formidable military power. But the true power would soon shift from father to son. Yet, on the day Alexander was born, a lightning bolt struck the temple of Artemis at Ephesus, and the temple was consumed by fire. The omen was clear: this was no ordinary child. From a young age, Alexander was marked by greatness. His mother, Olympias, believed her son was destined for something extraordinary, perhaps even divinity. The ancient world would soon come to see if she was right. Alexander's education was no ordinary schooling. At the age of 13, he was entrusted to the greatest philosopher of the time, Aristotle. Under Aristotle's tutelage, Alexander was exposed to the works of Homer, philosophy, science, and medicine. His mind, shaped by these teachings, would later lead him to become a brilliant strategist and tactician. But Alexander was more than just a scholar, he was a warrior in the making. His first taste of battle came at just 18 years old when he was appointed regent while his father fought a war. In his first campaign, Alexander defeated a rebellious Greek city-state, Thebes, with a cruelty that would later become a hallmark of his reign. The city was razed, and its people were enslaved. It was clear that this young prince was destined to carve his name into history with blood. In 336 BC, the unthinkable happened. King Philip II was assassinated by one of his bodyguards during a celebration. Alexander, at just 20 years old, suddenly found himself thrust onto the throne of a united Macedonian empire. The kingdom was in turmoil. Enemies, both within and outside the empire, saw an opportunity to rise up and challenge the new king. But Alexander wasted no time in asserting his authority. He swiftly crushed revolts in Greece, eliminating any potential threats to his rule. He even executed members of his own family who were seen as rivals. His resolve was as cold as it was ruthless, and soon, the entire Mediterranean world would learn to fear the name Alexander the Great. The first great campaign of Alexander's reign would take him to the vast and powerful Persian Empire, ruled by King Darius III. The Persians were formidable, but Alexander was relentless. In 334 BC, he crossed the Hellespont into Asia Minor and began a series of battles that would forever alter the course of history. At the Battle of Granicus, Alexander decisively defeated the Persian forces. The Persian satraps, governors, trembled in fear, but Alexander showed no mercy. His genius lay in his ability to read the battlefield like no one else. At Issus in 333 BC, he faced Darius himself and destroyed the Persian army in a decisive victory. But it wasn't just military might that earned Alexander his place in history. His vision for the future was one that fused the cultures of East and West. He would not just conquer, he would create an empire that blended the best of both worlds. In 332 BC, Alexander faced one of his most formidable challenges, the ancient city of Tyre. The city was located on an island, and its defenses were nearly impenetrable. Alexander's forces were not equipped for a siege of this magnitude, but he was not one to accept defeat. He ordered the construction of a massive causeway, an engineering marvel that eventually allowed him to breach the city's walls. For 7 months, Alexander's forces faced the full might of Tyre's defenders. But in the end, the city fell. Thousands of Tyrians were slaughtered, and those who survived were sold into slavery. This victory, though brutal, marked Alexander's reputation for achieving the impossible. In 331 BC, Alexander turned his attention to Egypt, a land that had been under Persian control for centuries. The Egyptians, weary of Persian rule, welcomed him as a liberator. But Alexander was more than a conqueror, he was a visionary. While in Egypt, Alexander was declared a god and pharaoh. At the oracle of Ammonius at Siwa, the priests hailed him as the son of Zeus. For many in the ancient world, this divine connection would secure Alexander's place among the gods themselves. He founded the city of Alexandria, a shining beacon of culture, knowledge, and trade. Alexandria would go on to become the greatest city of the ancient world. But Alexander's dreams didn't stop there. His empire was growing, and his ambition knew no bounds. By 326 BC, Alexander's army had marched deep into the heart of Asia. In the Battle of the Hydaspes River, he faced King Porus of India, a ruler whose army was formidable. But Alexander's tactical brilliance once again triumphed, and Porus was defeated. However, after years of constant campaigning, Alexander's men began to grow weary. They had crossed vast deserts, faced harsh terrain, and suffered heavy losses. When Alexander reached the banks of the Beas River, his army refused to march further into India. The dream of conquering the entire world began to unravel. Alexander was forced to turn back, but not without a bitter sense of unfulfilled destiny. In 324 BC, Alexander returned to Babylon, the heart of the ancient world. Here, he envisioned the creation of a grand capital, a city where East and West would come together in harmony. But as Alexander's power grew, so did his arrogance. He began to see himself as a living god, demanding worship from his subjects and forcing his men to adopt Persian customs. This new way of ruling alienated many of his closest companions. The cracks in his empire began to show. And then, in 323 BC, tragedy struck. On June 10, 323 BC, Alexander fell ill. The great conqueror, who had led his armies across the known world, was suddenly bedridden. His condition worsened, and within days, he died at the age of 32. The cause of his death remains one of the greatest mysteries in history. Was it a fever brought on by malaria or typhoid? Did his excessive drinking and lifestyle take their toll on his body? Or was his death the result of foul play, perhaps orchestrated by those who sought to end his reign? Conspiracy theories abound, but the truth remains elusive. Alexander the Great's death sent shockwaves through the ancient world. His empire, built on a foundation of conquest and bloodshed, was left without a strong leader. His generals, known as the Diadochi, fought among themselves for control. The empire eventually fractured into several Hellenistic kingdoms. Yet, despite the fragmentation of his empire, Alexander's legacy endured. His campaigns spread Greek culture across the known world, and his vision for a cosmopolitan empire continued to influence generations of rulers and conquerors. To this day, Alexander remains one of the most legendary figures in history. His name echoes through time as a symbol of ambition, greatness, and tragedy. Alexander the Great was many things: a military genius, a visionary, a conqueror, and a ruler who believed he was destined to shape the world. But his early death leaves a question that history will never fully answer. What could Alexander have accomplished had he lived longer? Would he have created the empire he dreamed of, or would his ambition have destroyed him? In the end, Alexander the Great remains a figure shrouded in mystery, his name forever linked to both greatness and tragedy. And his story, one of power, ambition, and untimely death, continues to captivate the world today.